Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this webinar on ISO 50001 for energy performance at portfolio scale. How do we get in line fast? In line with the EED, it's a big component of this webinar, but also in line with ISO itself, should you want to get accredited there and certified. There's really good ways to use this actually as an accelerator to save a lot of cost and energy within your company and get in line with legislation at the same time. So this is what the webinar will be about. I'll briefly let Alexander introduce himself before I introduce myself, maybe.
Well, first of all, Joachim, thank you for inviting me on this one-on-one panel talk on ISO 50001 and then the connection to the new EED, the Energy Efficiency Directive legislation. So maybe who are me, as you said, it's who am I hashtag. So maybe a short presentation of myself. So I've had around 25 plus years of experience within energy, clean tech, energy efficiency, renewable energy projects and executions. Started all with early 2000 engineering consultancy company. Then I went worldwide with a global food producing company. Best logo ever, the unicorn from Piratos. Afterwards, I took a role in the Grootmee Group. It's after the takeover of Sweco, a Swedish consultancy and engineering, which is the largest engineering and consultancy group in Europe. I had the lead of the Belgian operations of 4 branches: environmental, soil, water, and energy department. And ultimately, 8 years ago, I took the switch from the private sector to the public sector. And now I'm working for the VDAB, which is an entity of the Flemish government. It's the PES, the Public Employment Service of Flanders. So, but maybe we'll
give some good context. One of the main reasons that we invited Alexander for this is twofold. It's the broad experience across public and private sectors, industrial and the more like built environment, the combination of the two, which is very relevant for this audience and this topic, I think. And also the depth with which they implemented ISO and really booked really impressive results with it, which we'll show later a little bit on. So that is the reason we're here together. So quickly on the agenda, the introduction, it was what you just saw. Quickly on myself, I'm Joachim, one of the two co-founders of NRC. Main background as an environmental engineer and went into the industrial automation afterwards and big data analysis, pretty much in deployments of large data platforms, including energy efficiency, but not only. And then we co-founded NRC with Maarten, who's a deep domain expert in everything energy management and built environment. I come from the IoT data engineering space and industrial environment, and the combination of our two skill sets formed what we do. But that's enough about me, I think. So we'll cover the ISO 50001 basics and EED. So what is EED? What are the obligations? And what are the basics on 50001? Then from a 1520, we'll start covering what you actually need to get compliant. What are the steps? And then briefly near the end, we'll spend 10 minutes on how can you maybe do this faster with an AI-enabled EMS. That's not just monitoring, this part of the story, EMS versus ENMS. But so we'll briefly give you a little bit of a sneak peek into what it can do. But the majority will be 40 minutes on the standards and how to get compliant, independent of the system. And then we'll have a Q&A session near the end. Great. Also important, we have we have a Q&A and a chat. Feel free to chat with each other and interact with each other over the chat session. Helen and Anastasia of the NRC team are monitoring this one. If you really have questions for us, please post them in the Q&A, because that we will take a look at. We have a Q&A session at the end, but if something really important linked with what we're just talking about pops up, we might address it during the webinar already. So feel free to post in the Q&A section if you really have questions for the two of us. Let's get going. By the way, there will be a poll here and there from time to time popping up. This also gives interesting input for the Q&A session or for interactions later on during the webinar. So please fill these in if you have, if you can. Good, let's go. Quickly, maybe on the case here, or as an example, that was part of the introduction though. But
to give an idea on the case study from my part, in one of my previous jobs, namely for Sweco, I also implemented an ISO 50001 system. Might seem a bit weird because it's an engineering company. They only have offices, but the key factor there was to define the primary processes, also included the studies, the energy consultancy studies, and to monitor actual implementation of the clients, mainly in industry or in the built environment. Within the VDAB, it's a very also a multi-site, very big company, but it's not only offices, despite it is a governmental institution. We have a lot of semi-industrial sites also. So it's part industry, it's part built environment. We have both. A lot of square meters, 400,000 multi-site. That's also very important. Maybe in the tools we use ultimately, or for monitoring, but also for analyzing the monitoring data. Okay, big company, but really only a small operational energy team within my department.
Just 2 FTEs in the end.
Ultimately, 2 FTEs. If I count the resources I put on that, but it's the way we set it up and the way we automate things. Among others, automating also the monitoring analysis through NRC. But we had our company already, our environmental management system already certified in the early 2000s. Certification as of 2006. With one of the main parts was also energy included. So we were already working for 25 plus years almost on an active energy management within the company, which results also on the bottom left you see VDAB has already 3/4 of its CO2 emissions reduced. Operational CO2 emissions from the building patrimony. Also in primary energy usage, we have already halved, more than half of the energy consumption on the primary side has been reduced. But with the same hands and feet, we cover everything. So many more square meters and many more. The energy world has become much more complex as from when I started in the early days.
That's a big part of it,
yeah. So we need new tools. That's for sure.
So from now, this of course to give you a bit of context, what has been happening and why also we invited Alexander here in the webinar, because it's pretty impressive results already, especially given the team size. We'll be talking about the case of VDAB a little bit later to give you some concrete examples. And another case, which is an anonymized way, but we also have some other ISO 50001 compliant customers, including some with over 10,000 sites. So it's a mix of these experiences where we will be talking about. Good. How does this now translate to today? Since VDAB did it since 2020, but EED, of course, is coming into play later, though on the short term. So let's get here. So this is some impressions of the VDAB sites. I'll not stand still too much with that, but it gives you a bit of an idea of the variation of the types of sites they have. But the basics now, which we'll jump into. So what is it designed to deliver the standard? And how does it connect to EED obligations? And I think the obligations are probably a big reason why a lot of the people in the audience are here for. So going to this one. So the EED, the European Energy Efficiency or Energy Management Directive, is a directive from Europe, which means a directive is a type of legislation that identifies a framework of what has to be done across the EU, but is then implemented locally by each government. This means that each government at least has to comply with the EED, or it can become more stringent than what is in the EED. As we will see later, Germany, for example, is actually more strict than what the EED obliges countries to do, especially from a cutoff point of where it's obligatory.
Yeah, that's the gold plating. Member states, some member states go much further. They do gold plating of the European legislation. Now, latest things I'm hearing about that is that Europe doesn't like too much gold plating. They want to unify more the legislation, but we're not there yet. So that's some idea.
On gold plating at the moment.
There's still gold plating, and there will probably in the near future still be. Yeah.
But in most countries, it will be the cutoff points and thresholds defined in EED, which is what we'll focus on today. Just an important component here. The EED, what's important there, and we'll talk about in the next few slides, is that EED recognizes ISO 50001 as a valid alternative to the mandatory energy audits, not only to the energy audits, because they will be obligatory in a structured way by the end of this year, by October. Actually, from of next year, from a certain consumption level, which will come later, it will be, an ENMS really becomes obligatory. So we'll see when ISO is obliged or not obliged with the best framework and what can be done. As you will see, we'll have these little colors. So we'll talk back and forth, ask some questions, but mainly Alexander will cover what the standard really is, because he's got a lot of experience in there. I will give a bit of the input on EED first. So let's go to the next. That being said, I think this is pretty important for most of you. So here's the difference between the mandatory energy audits and the implementation of an energy management system. So audits that are structural, there's multiple ways of approaching this in a more automated and digital way or in a more classic way, let's say, but will be obligatory from 10 terajoules per year, which actually in most companies think in gigawatt hours and not in terajoules, so which is approximately 2.8 gigawatts per year over the last 3 years. And then a more stringent legislation is the energy management system that will be obligatory from October 2027, but given the implementation timelines, that's almost now, let's put it that way. An important thing there is you're not strictly obliged to be ISO 50001 compliant. It's just you can either become compliant and certified during this using the standard, or you simply follow all the lines and regulations within the EED, which actually is a less structured way of doing exactly the same thing. At least so I interpret it. I don't know what your vision is on that.
Yeah, correct. There are a lot of Belgian viewers, maybe also some of the states I heard, but within Belgium we had the audit convenance, the benchmark convenance, accord de branche in Wallonie in the year 2000s. You could implement a certified energy management system, or you could follow Article 9, and often those are practically the same. What is an ISO 50001 energy management system? It's just the right way to do on managing your energy and everything within that related framework. So if you're not certifying, you should almost always tick all the boxes, all the requirements within the chapters of written down in that ISO, which is an international standard organization. and they just put themselves together and wrote a guideline on how you could have good housekeeping and good practices in managing your energy. And it's evolving. It's already from the years the 90s where we have ISO systems, and the focus gets shifted sometimes during the decades. So we are upcoming a new shift within this year and next years. But I will go into more deep into that in a few slides.
Cool. Yeah. So as you can see, there is a set of regulations coming into place now already, which are the mandatory energy audits plus action plans that you follow up on, which is kind of ISO light, let's put it that way. But if you're certified, you don't have to do that. So it might be sometimes easier to just do that. But if you're in this consumption brackets, a certification or similar is obligatory. That's it. You'll get the slides afterwards. So there's also the links to the actual articles where all of this comes from in the deck. So just what does it mean? I'll go over this pretty quickly to avoid spending too much time, as we're staying time. But in the end, what it comes down to means that you have a clear overview of all of your energy consumptions across the board. You know all of your significant energy users. I can tell that significant means all of the biggest consumers and also the ones you can act most on, right?
Yes, and Pareto is your best friend. So the 80-20 rule, usually 20% of your biggest energy consumers are responsible of 80% of your total consumption. And you need to define those significant energy users and focus on that.
On these.
Yeah. It's very important to keep it practical also.
Makes total sense. So then it's not only identifying those, having really good visibility on all of your streams and what goes where, so you don't have hidden losses, but also then implement proven measures, track the results and savings over time continuously or continually mainly. So it means often,
but track continuously all of the time.
And then provide transparent documentation. So some issues you often see is data fragmentation, multiple systems across countries, that audits are very periodic and reporting is manual, which means that also a lot of information gets lost across different documents in different states. And it's very time intensive, and the assets and processes behind it are not always as well understood by everyone in the whole organization. Doesn't mean there's no experts in the company, but if you have a lot of assets to manage, which is often the case if you're above those consumption thresholds, this becomes hard. I actually explained this already, so you can go through it. But in the end, why is it just easier often to use the framework? Simply, if you don't, you actually have to comply with the same set of rules, but there is no standardization and no process in place. So then every time you can get audited or you can get control, all of a sudden you realize you need all the reporting, you need to backfill a lot of the compliance of the last period, which you didn't continuously gather. But then actually it also becomes a bit of a redundant exercise, because then you're actually doing it purely to comply. It's almost as much work, but you're not getting the benefits of actually saving this much energy and CO2 in practice. So it reduces, and this is also a pretty good one, reduces the reliance on recurring external audits, which really makes for that you're more focused on actual savings with people that are close to your organization that really help you build results and in a continuous and structural way. I'm going to skip a little bit over these, so not skip, but go fast, so we actually can go into the basics.
Yeah.
Maybe let's start with this one.
We just had a moment there. You said continuous. Semantics is important.
Continual and continuous is an important one. Yeah.
ISO. So you track your consumptions continuously. You do it every second or every quarter of an hour. You measure and you analyze it and you detect anomalies. But continual improvement is really the basis of every ISO system. You need to continue to have continual improvement, so not incremental, but you can have steps during your ISO cycle, which is typically 3 years. And and you need to improve. You need to improve your system, not always your energy KPIs. Sometimes they will get worse because your product is changing, or you're having other factors which result in a bigger consumption. But you need to have your system improved. That's very important. Now there are many ISO systems. Maybe the 9001 is the most commonly known and used for quality. It's a quality system. Also the ISO 14001.
Environmental management.
Exactly. Talked already about it. And one thing they have now in common within the last update is that they have a high-level structure, which means that all the ISOs have the same high-level structure and can be audited at the same time. It's really important if you already have ISO systems, other ones, that you could rather easily also have the energy management system also. We as VDRB, we have the ISO 14001 and 50001. We have one auditor, external auditor,
combining those two,
which audits, and he audits both systems in one hand. So that saves time on within the company as well.
And maybe like very briefly on this one, but just it's not only the energy management team, but you really need to involve all stakeholders.
Key success factor is top management buy-in. That's really important. It's also integrated within the ISO system, the leadership involvement and ownership.
It's obliged, actually.
It's
not just for enabling.
It's a requirement. Obviously, it's a requirement. But if
you do it well, it really helps.
If you have your company certified, it's also a leverage to have it well structured and also well implemented within the company. Ownerships, roles and ownerships are delegated. This is about the flow, how it goes. We have a certification body. Every country has an accreditation body which accredits certain certification bodies. We are certified by VASOT.
There's a few bigger players that can actually certify that. Get accreditation.
Sure. But we do a public tender, and currently all our labels related to ISO, we have to mention our certification body. And as I said, if you have other ones, you can surely go to some synergies. This is VDRB case. What we already reduced 75% in CO2. We have an ambition to go even further to absolute zero by 2040.
On this one, to what extent would you say? Because of course, the standard itself doesn't save anything directly. That this is a way of approaching work. But for you, to what extent has the certification, but not the certification necessarily, but following the process, to what part of this results would you attribute to to actually following this process?
Well, it's the commitment, the top management commitment from the early years 2000, which liberated resources within the companies. People nominated people as coordinators. Also money, multiple year investment plans, and that's why we have a reduction curve and a continual improvement. You see it here. In 2006 we had our first certification. The years before we had our management system, environmental management system implemented. So you see the results of a continual improvement within every year. The cycle is it's a denim circle which rolls up the hill, and
in this case
it works
down this hill. But
no,
good. But also this is of course CO2, which is obviously from an environmental perspective extremely important, but also purely primary energy. You're also less than 50% of initial consumption, I believe, 52% down, something like that.
Yes.
So that's also pretty impressive and has a big cost impact, right?
For sure, it makes that we pay around half of the energy costs, as if business as usual we would have never ever done something. It's primary. I know it's not really half, but it saves a lot of money. It's a gift that keeps on giving. The savings which we did early 2000s, we are benefiting still today. Not only in CO2 reduction, in the carbon budget which we safeguard, but also in our OPEX energy costs.
Makes sense. So here it's going to be more about the steps. So before it was a little, what is it about? The goal of this webinar really is like how to get compliant and what are steps, and also the timeline, mainly like how much time does this take? Given that you have a first deadline in October 2026 and a second big deadline in October 27, like how much time does it take? The classic way between brackets, and then also later we'll see can we shortcut that a little bit and save some time there. But like that is far in the future, but also close by in the end. So where are we at, and where we have to be? So this is the goal here is really about the timeline. So like if you run through these are 3 steps. Now we have in the end 6 steps to get compliant, and then it's like recertification and things that keep on going, whether you do it with certification or not, but you'll have to stay in line with them. Like here, can you just run us through very briefly, but also say like what's actually taking the most time, and maybe also the most frustration in this process?
Sure. As you mentioned, October 2027, it might seem far, but it's really very close by, in my opinion. Preparation, and it all depends, obviously, if you have already another ISO system or you have some
might
things.
Take some time.
You need to do a gap analyze regarding what do I already have installed versus the ISO 50001 requirements. And that let's say that you start from scratch, then in my opinion you should start tomorrow, or maybe after this webinar, maybe already reading some link you post here. But it's really not something that you can implement in a few months. Why? Because before you could get certified, you also need documented. You have to have some documentation. For instance, you measure your energy. You need a project to put in the hardware to read out your meters.
And where does that fit in here? Because you start with because first, like actually knowing what are our assets actually. It's an asset inventory. Who does what? A little bit of who can own what as well. Like there's clear ownership in the organization. This hardware decision, where does it fall? Is it step 2, step 3?
Actually, it's in the next step, the monitor of performance, chapter 4 here in this.
So here you need this in place
to monitor your energy performance against the baseline you set. For us, it's 2005, for instance, and you also need to put in the targets.
An important question here, maybe there's also like modern, because maybe first of all, I think it comes later, but an ENMS, so it's an energy management system, really is not the same as an energy monitoring system, right? Monitoring is just one little component of it.
Correct. It's a cornerstone of an energy.
You need data.
You need data. It's a requirement within ISO 50001, not within the energy management included in the 14001, for instance.
Once you go to 50,000
with monthly data and so on, but within the 50,000.
So within EED in the end.
Yes, correct.
You need data and higher frequency data.
Yes.
But then if you look at that, because like collecting data, hardware is one component, and some countries have really well, or regions also, because in Flanders, if we look at Flanders, Wallonia, Brussels, even in Belgium, but looking at France, Spain, Germany, there's very different levels of main meter data. To what extent, because it's modern EM monitoring systems and ideally ENMS systems that go beyond that can easily collect main meter data as well. In which fraction of the if main meter data, high frequency, 15-minute, 10-minute main meter data are available, in what fraction of the cases would you say that that is enough for ISO, and what fraction do you really need sub-metering?
We talked about the SEUs, significant energy users. You need to also sub-meter those.
And double, so because you're obliged to have double checking of meters as well, right?
That's
the detail.
That's another requirement. You need to be sure that your significant meters are measuring correct and
that's not the significant ones.
Repeated.
So not every across the board.
So the main meters, for instance, where you get billed on, because that's a cost for sure, main meter or significant meter, but also your significant energy users. You need to have control over
and understand what happens below them.
Sub-metering is also.
But then again, 80-20. You might need main meter data or integrated for maybe 80% of your asset, but need deep sub-metering on 20% of your complex assets.
And for an industrial company, it has more processes. And for an office building, it might be some less sub-metering.
So that's
actually defining the boundary is what do I take in scope, and which processes and or buildings I leave out of scope. You can choose it in a standard ISO 50001 system. You can choose it within the EED. You will be required to have your total company included, but within.
So you're actually easier off using ISO than EED in that case. Well, or maybe in a more Pareto way.
Well, we could use to have only our big training centers, industrial sites within the boundary of the ISO, but we also included our small job
just from
job shops, as we call
energy
them,
management perspective.
They're very small and energy wise, but we included everything within our ISO system. So another one is to have the energy review and the baseline identified. And you see some mentions also impacts, risk, opportunities. The people maybe who are already aware of the CSRD legislation. There's a stop the clock, I know, but that is one requirement within the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive of upcoming. You will see that much more things that will also be used or usable within the CSRD reporting are included or are going to be included in the new ISO versions. Yeah. So that's also a benefit, maybe that's under
timeline-wise here. We're talking 6 months approximately to.
If you have no hardware and you have not yet any procedures written out, or
to really get ready, actually
to describe the processes which have a relation, obviously, to the energy consumption. So always with the glasses of energy.
So then actually implementing everything. And then also start using it after the 6 months is like regular internal audits, etc., to really make the energy management system. So once again, this is including all the processes, documentation, the full audit log, to really use that for a certain amount of periods. So you really have data in it and usage in it, and then you're actually ready to get certified.
An internal audit, you challenge yourself, or you have an external consultancy company, have checks, or you do it yourself. But that's very important also that you check yourself. Yeah.
And then here we're at 12 months. Once again, maybe there is some ways to speed things up if you
give or take 12 months. Yeah.
But obtaining external certification, and that's when, in your case, Vincent, but there's other companies doing this, depending on the country. I think some of the big ones, what are the biggest names here? The certification across Europe.
Yeah, Vincent, SGS. You have others. They need to be accredited by BELIAC.
In that country.
In Belgium, it's BELAC.
Or the equivalent in each country.
Each country.
And what others are there? Bureau Veritas is one as well in a lot of countries. So those can really get the certification. How long does depending, maybe it's also highly depending on how well it is structured. But how long does the actual certification take?
Yeah, maybe go one slide back because in step one, that's why I talked about defining your boundary and your scope, because the certification body will do its calculation. How many square meters, how many buildings, and how many accountable or responsible persons are related to your processes, how many processes you have. And then they calculate how many audit days you have.
Okay, and that's actually defined in the start already.
Yes, so that's something to think about. I will include everything. For us, it's between 8 and 11 audit days every year. So if it's a recertification audit a year, then it's 11 days. If it's only a follow-up in between, it's a 3-year cycle. So every 3 years,
you've got
you need to recertify. And every year,
so it's important that your system really is easy to follow up and keep everything. So it's not a one-off, but it's the system to really get that. Someone else is joining. Welcome, Rowan. So yeah, external versus internal.
So internal
a little bit.
compliancy is legislation. You need to have a system in place. It's always have systems in place to make sure that you can manage it. Internal energy reviews, it's more like a technical review. It's similar to maybe an energy audit, but you can do it within your own company. And then internal system audits, it's like same as the external auditor, but it's also challenging yourself and checking if the system has any fails. That's how you should do it.
We'll just, looking at the time a bit, we'll try to go through the next few in a few minutes, and then we actually go to a little bit of like, how can it be done in practice. Also, by the way, to the audience, if you have questions, feel free to post them in the Q&A in the meantime. But quickly on this, so I don't think we have to expand too much, but just to have like clarity on what is an energy monitoring system versus what is an energy management system, looking from the EED or ISO perspective.
It's also semantics and abbreviations.
But it's important in this case.
It's important. Many use EMS also for ISO 50001, but if you see at the standard energy management,
quite a bit more elaborate.
ENMS as an abbreviation. If you're talking about an EMS in ISO, that's environmental management system. But EMS can also obviously mean the monitoring of energy and energy monitoring system, which we are talking about already. But also an EMS, which is a system that manages energy, like battery energy systems, PV voltage, photovoltaics, and more a controlling system.
But in this context, we're talking ENMS. So here we're talking getting all your data centrally, but also analyzing everything so you really
getting the data from the energy management system in the ENMS, in the
so it means
energy monitoring system. I misspoke. My bad.
But really the process around it and having really visibility on all of your consumption streams plus processes and live PDCA to actually plan to check act to really get it.
Correct.
So I'm going to go fast a little bit over this, but I think, so what do you actually need? There's the Ready Navigator, which is a really big document in the end that helps you, which actually breaks it down in 25 practical tasks and a lot of things that have to be done in the background. So we're talking from context, like what is all your context in your consumption streams, to leadership, like who's involved and who gets ownership of what budgets, who can do what in the organization, including C-level ownership to an extent. So the planning, which means you need a really big plan, but also especially iterations on the plan. Support, so who's in line, operations, how you run it, how do you really operate it, performance evaluations, and continual improvement, continual measurement and continual improvement. Let's put it that way. I think it will become more clear later down the line, but do you want to add something to this here?
Well, if here you see the chapters written in the ISO standard. and many refer also to the numbers of chapter 4 context. So that's something. It's a clear framework, and it's interchangeable with other ISO standards.
Yeah. So we would I think practical examples of what it look like, they come in the next part. So we'll do that in about 3 to 4 minutes. Maybe if you look at this, some key struggles we identified across multiple customers, of course, like for VDIB in your case, or maybe in previous companies where you in the end implemented the same processes, not necessarily ISO was to the 50,000K, the 50K was to be invented maybe to an extent, but the processes were the same. What are the biggest struggles in practice in your case?
Yeah. The first ISO 50001 was in 2011 launched, but before there were obviously other management systems before that. But struggles, as in for instance the VDIB case, was actually managing multi-site, and I implemented on a quarterly basis energy monitoring system. It wasn't manageable anymore with human labor. And that was
what did that mean in practice?
That meant that within my external audits, I got a non-conformity. A minor or a major non-conformity could lead to a cancellation of your certificate.
If you don't remediate within the next year.
Yeah, you need to work on it. So after those 11 audit days, you get a non-conformity, okay, and within the 7 days, you need to have a plan ready how you will tackle that non-conformity. And then you can work 1 year on it and see if you made progress. If next year the non-conformity is still in place,
can you give a practical example of it? So why was the human factor a problem then?
Well, because we by rolling out sub-metering and also on a quarterly hour basis, we had 5 million data points every month, versus in the old EMS we had only monthly figures. So that was much more labor intensive. So it wasn't manageable anymore. And that's one of the key success factors was actually the automatic anomaly detection from the energy module that was able to clear that non-conformity. And for the first time ever this year, which is pretty exceptional, I have been told, we have cleared all non-conformities and we didn't score a new non-conformity. So we have no issues anymore. We have a lot of opportunities for improvement, which are also detected by the auditor, and we have also some points to take attention to, but the major and minor non-conformities are all cleared.
Okay, so, good. We'll get back to your question, Radim, on if you have multiple legal entities, do they both separately have to get certified or not? We'll dive into that question in a bit with a few more topics to touch on, and then we'll certainly handle that one. Thanks for the question. Great question. So briefly said, you can individually do all of these things, but it's very often easily centralizing all data across different sources, sometimes countries and regions, but also documenting all the analysis you do and automating that is a really big part. And often there it goes wrong. A plan gets created in Excel files, and then someone stores it on the SharePoint, and then no one picks it up, and then you have to recertify or get a check, and then you have to retrospectively log all of that, which is a lot of work, and then you also don't get the benefits, right? So that's a little bit what we. Good question, Aubrey, as well. We'll come to that as well. But so it's about how do we make it easy to actually save energy and reduce costs, and actually track everything in a structured way, so you don't have to spend 2 months of backfilling your reporting afterwards. There are some updates coming or already updates in place on the 2011 and 2018. There was actually a new update that's about to be released.
Yeah, on the ISO 9001 quality and on the 14001 environment. They're currently, the 14K is going to be released in April this year, and I think the 9001 will be around September. And there are new clauses and new focus points shifting.
It's a logical evolution.
Yeah. And I see more climate action related, also environmental impact, those kind of
linked
things.
with energy. Yep.
Yes, and more. I always make the bridge also to CSRD, more CSRD compliant. CSRD has 1,000 plus data points within the new omnibus package. It will be reduced, but it's still quite a lot of data points. But if you are already ISO running ISO, you will have a lot of those things already
covered,
especially in the new versions, which I listed up some main changes or add-ons here. You see the supply chain.
There, it's important to stay in line and have a system in place to get updated.
In the CSRD, you do a double materiality analysis, for instance, also stakeholder analysis, which is also back-to-back usable in both systems. If you do it for one, if you need to do it for the CSRD, you could easily transport it to the ISO.
Normally later, by the way, for the audience, so this one was focused on what do you get to do to get in line. We will have another one, how can we actually stay in line easily as well, somewhere in the next few months. Some of the people in the audience are actually organizing this, and we'll communicate that. Here briefly on this one, and then we'll jump to the Q&A. I won't do this too long, but it's what are we doing in practice or what can we do to play a role? Obviously, it's not unwise to work with NRC, but I would just like to give you a sneak peek into what's possible here and how you can really make it easier to get compliant and mainly reap the benefits, because the goal is that it's not just more admin and more overhead, but that it's actually about how do we do energy management well and actually save us some CO2 and some energy costs. That being said, what that actually means is, very briefly, so this is the overview of the classic, what we do as NRC as a system. So there is Connect, so like how do you first of all get all your data, both sub-metering as well as main meter data across countries easily into one system with good data quality and tracking. But then we feed it into an AI that actually analyzes all consumptions and puts it into context automatically. And with automatically, we mean it puts weather data next to it. If you have throughput rates or production information, you can link it to it. And it contextualizes what energy consumption is. So like, when is it normal to consume a lot and when not? And when is a lot, and when is a lot, but perfectly normal given what you're doing. And that feeds into a strategic component, which is targets and scenario planning, which is the plan pretty much, and the iteration on the plan. Projects, which is actually tracking of all the projects in an automated way. So it creates baselines for everything from like sub-energy consumers to sites to, you could do it on a global level. So what does a main baseline mean? It's creating like how much should you consume in every context, but that adapts itself to the context. So you actually, what should you be consuming at every moment in time, compensated for external variables such as weather, but also throughput rates or occupancy rates, etc.
And your forecast, your expected consumption, and it gets checked or
with
compared with the actual consumptions which you measure.
Yeah. So it's a bit like comparing the reality with the what-if scenario if you didn't do anything, in a sense, right? So Steve Cromer, like, I don't know if he's here, but like, the guy behind IPMVP, he calls it counterfactuals. So like comparing when you change something with what would have happened if you didn't change something, right?
Yeah.
A bit that. And operations is, in a way, how do you day-to-day improve things, quick wins, anomalies, etc. Now, that being said, that's not ISO. This is a system where ISO becomes a lot easier around this. This is not ISO. But what you can do is if you link all of your compliance to a system like this, you're actually doing and executing all of these steps in a way more automated way. But then the question is, how do you document this all and make it documentation easy? So planning, doing, and checking and acting, in the end, it's mapping those significant energy users, the backbone. So who executes? People execute the plan, and then NRC will document everything automatically. Continual improvement is like smart alerting, auditable follow-up on everything you planned. Is it actually being done as planned? And should you change or steer things? And checking is actually the final results, and that's feeding back into planning and really real-time execution of the PDCA, and not a plan that gathers dust on a SharePoint.
Check act.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the check and act are indeed switched here. They should be in that order. But indeed, the checking and then acting is acting on what you checked. And from there, I'm going to very briefly show you what that looks like. But actually, this is then a dashboard on top of that all. And what this in the end does is you see the overall completion for your initial certification, but you actually see per category, where are you? And also on some of the categories, you can see these exclamation marks, and that means that you got a remark in the last certification of those. So for example, if you look at this, you can actually, if you look at the audits, so you see here we did an audit this time, we were 100% ready, and you got some focus points out of that. And then you can see, okay, what are my focus points? What do I get out of this? And this one, for example, is one we now have to start. It's a repeat task, and it's due soon. And this was the last time you got some remarks on it, so it will be double checked by an auditor. And then you kind of see, okay, this is upper management commitment, what has to be done here, get a bunch of templates and that you can download, and then you can actually assign these tasks to people. And then with that, you see, okay, it's assigned to Woo, you can mark it in progress, and then you actually see all of the steps, the tracking on each of these documents, the status of it, moving across the board. And then mark it as done. And then you see all of the audit trail on everything, who did what, moving. So this is a little bit of the idea. How do you execute it in the monitoring and the real-time management system that automates a lot, but linked with also keeping track of everything at the same time. And a really cool example here is, I think, this one, and then I'll stop showing what we do. But for example, you make a plan, with a lot of companies now do in an Excel file, but actually then all of these projects have to be tracked and need baselines if you want to comply, which is actually independently of complying just a good practice, because not all projects yield the results you want. So you want to track them, but you see that, okay, in the software, only 23%, not percent, but 23 out of the 30 defined projects actually are tracked. So then you can go to projects and you see the real-time actual projects and the real-time applied IPVP baselines on those projects. And then you have it helps you nudge you where do you have a gap, so you don't have to go back and forth between different documents and different locations. So it connects day-to-day energy management and actually cost reduction with compliance. So that's a little bit it, and it gives you a tracker like, okay, we're almost there, and if you're here, it'll turn in the right color, and you're ready to go for certification. Yeah, that's a little bit what it does.
For a first certification, it's not necessary to have 100% to take the leap. So you will always get feedback from the auditor, opportunities for improvement. That's just ideas to improve. You don't have to do anything with them. Focus points, those you need to tackle and to correct by the next audit cycle. And non-conformities, those you have to really make an action plan within the next week and then act on it. So, but yeah, I think the system is interesting for people or companies starting with an ISO system, but also maintaining it during the cycle, because you can upload. We saw the management leadership. An annual requirement is to have a management review presented by the board. Yeah, there's a picture of the management review. It looks back, what did we do last year? It looks currently, where are we standing now, the results, and what are we planning to do the next period. And then you have some compliances you have to do with the board of directors, and you can upload that document within the tool.
I'm going to, absolutely. I would love to talk half an hour more about that specifically, but maybe let's do that in a separate session later, but we're almost out of time. So I'm going to just rush through this a little bit and then spend the last few minutes on the Q&A. We can talk 10 minutes more in Q&A, but of course, fully understand if not everyone can stay. But very briefly, so the idea is that it really automates things a lot, that it makes things easier, centralizes everything, and also makes it easier to get compliant, but also save energy. But you'll still need advisory resources. The thing is that they can work a lot easier, and then it becomes less work, and it's just generally also faster to get there. That being said, we had an example case in here, but I'm just, in the end, what we often see with some of our customers is that you have a lot of country-specific monitoring tools, Excel files, email follow-ups, but the systems are not connected. And once you do connect them, what you really get to is a system that executes it continuously in the background for you, so you can really focus. PDCA becomes something live in real time in the background. So it helps you focus on where should your attention go, because there you have the biggest saving potentials, instead of having a ton of admin work around it. So in the end, it becomes about action. It becomes about reducing energy cost if you do ISO right with a system like NRC, or just a good setup, that it becomes a way to improve continually in your energy performance and really hit cost reductions if you do it well. Would love to expand a little bit on the actual case here, but that we won't have enough time for. So we'll just jump to some of the Q&A questions now, if that is okay. So the maintaining it will come in a later session, and there are a bunch of links here where you can look things up of what we talked about, the more detailed info. So we'll now jump to actual questions and Q&A.
For the people maybe need to leave, there will be a recording of the webinar also posted. And maybe we can also take within the distribution of the slides some Q&A.
Some Q&A, yeah.
Answer some of the questions also in the slides.
So if some of you have still questions, please still post them in the Q&A. Then we will answer some now, but the rest will be the answers will be distributed. Maybe one important question is here. So if you have multiple companies with separate legal entities, and they're part of the same holding, does each legal entity have to obtain the certification? In this case, in their case of Radim's question, you have one with 20 gigawatt hours, one with 8, and one with 40. So also there, with some of them, you fall within the first bracket of obligatory audits and planning, except if you're compliant, then that drops. And with the other ones, you're by default obliged to have an ENMS one way or another. Well, normally, at the moment, it's based on legal entity. Of course, there's some nuance to that, because if the holding is if it's really clearly a way to avoid certification, then this often doesn't hold up. But if it's actually separate companies and they're part of a holding, normally it's the legal entity that counts, especially if it's different legal entities in different countries, because of the implementation, it's European, but it remains a directive, so it's implemented on a country level. So in the end, it's separate. The obligations are also separate, because in your question, Radim, two of your assets still have to comply with EED to a certain extent. One has to be compliant with the most stringent extent. But the practice is, it's obviously a lot easier to just set one system up, especially if the activities are also linked. if it's not 3 completely different types of activities within the same holding, then it's just easier to do it in one system. I do think you need to get accredited by the accrediting party or certification party that is active or certified, like to certify. What was the name exactly? You talked about in the beginning.
Vincent is doing the certification for us, and the accreditation is done by Beliac.
Yeah, but so that then you need a party that's not just allowed to do that in this one country, but that is allowed to do it in all countries where you're active.
Yeah.
And that's then important to put that into place. You have to add something to that one?
No, maybe next one from Needs Aubrey. The question is, and what extent of 75 emission reduction is related?
Yeah.
Is related to 75% is related to the energy management system, the ISO 50K, which we introduced in 2020. But the reduction is partly also because we have always done an active energy management within the ISO 14001, for sure. And if you see the graph, also you see that the years before 2020 we were stagnating, and I implemented a new energy management, a new energy monitoring system together with the management system. Also introduced the AI analytics because I was unable to get it done
with just resources at hand
at a reasonable cost by non-man laborers. So it was really stagnating, and by implementing the ISO 50001 related to a new energy monitoring system, I was able to the last 6 years I think we reduced I think it was 36% within the last 6 years from 20
on top of
2020
where you were already significantly reduced here.
Yeah, so, but you saw the stagnating. That was there was some things that had to be done to
really break through and go further.
Break through.
But also, I think an important part is in the end, before, since you were also already doing the environmental standard, part of it was like you already did parts of what you do in a system. It just you standardized it more and made it more homogeneous and easier to do it with a smaller team.
Yeah,
but it's not that all of this was not applying the same principles.
Yeah, correct. And it's surely is also having the resources and the investments to get things done. Just energy reviewing and having the potential energy and CO2 reduction measures defined, it's not enough. You need to act on it. So not only plan them, but also execute. The do phase is very important.
Good. If there's other questions, feel free to still post them in the Q&A or the chat. Just taking a look if there's anything else. We will answer them after the webinar. Just generally, if you have feedback as well, we hope it was actually interesting for every one of you and that it was what you expected. Feel free to give us a thumbs up or down or whatever, or like share what you liked or not. If you have any feedback of what we could have done better as well to make it more informative for you, feel free to post those as well. We love feedback. We'll do more webinars and live events as well. So very keen on additional feedback there. So if you have anything, feel free to comment there. Good. Thanks, everyone, for your attention.
Thank you. And thanks to the viewers.
Good.
Take care. Bye.
Bye, everyone.